What up, gang? I'm back with another video. I say I'm back with another video. Make sure you hit that like button, comment, subscribe. Yes, I said subscribe. Turn on your post notifications. It's free.
Can we do, any of you guys have any objection to that?
I'll look into that.
What?
I'll look into it.
All right. With your permission, I think that'd make things a lot easier.
Okay. I don't have any issue with it. Okay. All right.
You all right? Captain Clark. Right, Captain.
Okay, Rodeus Ryan.
Attorney Angela DeLittle's for Mr. Ryan.
Good morning again, madam. Is Mr. Ryan sitting next to you?
Yes, he is.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other issues in regards to Daubert or 702, madam?
I know you're on it.
Okay, all right.
I just heard from Ms. Sagan, she is in Gwinnett on a speedy trial motion. I think she said she filed a conflict. Her trial last week, she received an acquittal, but she is in Gwinnett, and I can communicate with her if you want her to get here after the hearing.
I filed this, this was filed on the 22nd of November, so she needs to have done, I don't know if we got a conflict letter. Did we get one, Mr. Chamberlain?
I have to check my email.
All right.
I don't know if I had this way after she's done her hearing.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, Antonio Sledge?
Here.
Where are you, Mr. Sledge?
Here you go.
Okay, all right. Do we have an attorney yet, Mr. Hoover?
No, Your Honor, still working on that one.
Mr. Wright is withdrawn, is that right?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Okay, all right. Trontavia Stevens, Ms. Gladden?
Your Honor, I don't have any of the motions or any of the petitions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, madam. All right, Shannon Stillwell.
David Potts from Mr. Stillwell, he says take all the time you.
Okay, all right. Thank you, sir. Okay, Antonio Sumlin.
Good morning, Your Honor. Sean Hoover, Mr. Sumlin is here, and we just updated what everybody else said.
Okay, all right, thank you, sir. All right. Okay, I've taken roll, and I think we've accounted for everybody we need to account for, as well as councils. Okay. Ms. Rosenwasser, I will, the time is about 10:50. Let me go ahead and give you till about 11:20, and I can check in with you at that point in time. I'll come back out, and you can, you as well as other council can go ahead and tell me what arrangements or agreements you have come to in regards to the experts and the days. What I'm hoping, or if you are, then we can maybe reorder some of these witnesses, like especially your gang expert, since they may take a little bit of time. And I have a question. Why is Mr. Vivarito testifying via video conference?
Your Honor, that was, I spoke to the court about that at the hearing on November 17th. I asked the court if there was a witness who had pre-planned travel plans, if we could do her via video conference.
Okay, yes, you did.
He filed that motion. Only defendant Kitchens objected, and he is no longer on this case.
That's, yeah, okay, I got it. I remember that, madam. Okay, all right.
Thank you,
Okay, let me go ahead and recess then so you all can chat. And like I said, I'll come back on at 20 minutes after or thereabouts, and we can go ahead and continue our discussions. Okay, so we're in recess.
Thank you.
All right. All right, councils, if we go ahead and get situated again. Thank you very much. All right, Ms. Rosenwasser, did you have ample time to talk with your colleagues?
Yes, Your Honor. I believe that we have spoken, and from what I understand, I hope defense counsel will correct me if I'm wrong. The conclusion that I was able to understand is that they would like us to put all of our witnesses up and certainly establish the qualifications and the reliability, but they are particularly interested in challenging our gang experts. I think that, but we will, to that said, we will be prepared to go ahead and present testimony from all the witnesses on our list. If that's fair.
That's fair. And logistically what that means, Judge, is that we're not waiving the qualifications that will be required under Daubert, but we do not anticipate we will have much, if any, questions for certain witnesses. For example, as we've discussed before, medical examiners, forensic chemists, fingerprint experts, that sort of thing. We will certainly have, we expect to have a significant amount of questioning for the gang experts once they're put on.
Okay. Well, I'm just trying to get as much opportunity to do that. So to that extent, we'll we may have to reshuffle some of these witnesses, but let's just see where we are. All right, can we for the witnesses you have today, you have Dr. Sullivan,
Yes.
Mr. Lauzon,
Yes.
and you have Ms. Sims. Do you have any of those available right now?
I have, Your Honor, we have Dr. Sullivan and Mr. Lauzon available, and as I said earlier, Ms. Sims had that family emergency, so Dr. Sims will be on the 29th, but we do have Deputy Hall available to come today if the court would like to fill out the schedule today. He's available. We had him on the schedule for tomorrow, but we can get him here this afternoon if the court would like to hear from him as well.
I'm trying to accommodate some other folks that are not here as of yet, since that's fairly substantial and significant testimony. So, and I'm trying to make sure I can deconflict whether or not, you know, everyone was given an opportunity to be here today. Everyone was noticed to be here today. So,
So we can certainly have Deputy Hall come tomorrow as planned. I just wanted to make sure we had him available for the court because we were sorry about that last-minute family emergency with Dr. Sims.
but is there any way that we can get like Miss Scott or Mr. Pinea or or Mr. Brennan or Paulzik, Dr. Hanninger, any of those folks any earlier than?
I can.
Because I don't think it's going to take us that long to finish. I mean, I was just going to use Dr. Sullivan and Mr. Land kind of as a test matter, and we'll see how long it takes. But
Your Honor, I can. So I can certainly call if the court is. Ms. Scott is the witness whose child is sick, so we had moved her to Wednesday. But if the court would be amenable to her via video conference, I might be able to get her this afternoon. I can certainly try to make some calls and see if I can get anyone else. But
let's just see how long. Let's just get Dr. Sullivan here and get her.
And we also do have Officer Lauzon. They're both back here and ready to go.
Let's just do those and see how long that takes us, and then we can kind of gauge from there. And I can kind of at lunch give you some marching orders of maybe some other people we can get maybe this afternoon or via Zoom. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Okay. All right. So go ahead and summon Dr. Sullivan, please.
I do.
Karen Sullivan, Karen Sullivan.
Hey, go ahead.
Thank you. Dr. Sullivan, thank you for being here today. Could you, and I know you just spelled your name for the record, can you please state where you currently are employed?
I'm the Chief Medical Examiner for the Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office here in Atlanta.
And how long have you been employed there?
I did my fellowship year of forensic pathology training in 2002 to 2003. Stayed on part-time until October 2007, at which point I became a full-time employee there.
Okay. And what was your education prior to becoming a medical examiner, the chief medical examiner?
Well, I have an undergraduate degree in zoology from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and a master's degree in anatomy from the University of Georgia, and after which I was a high school teacher here in Fulton County for about 5.5 years before going to medical school at Morehouse School of Medicine in Atlanta. And then I did a pathology residency at Emory University, and then a forensic pathology fellowship at the Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office in conjunction with Emory.
Okay, thank you very much. And so through all those positions, was that all training to become a medical examiner, especially the medical school and the other courses you took?
Yes.
Okay. Is that the general path of training for people that would become a medical examiner or chief medical examiner?
Yes.
Okay. Are you involved in any professional organizations?
The National Association of Medical Examiners.
Okay, thank you. Your Honor, at this point, I would like to move to admit State's Exhibit 1 for the purposes of this hearing. It is Dr. Sullivan's CV. This has been provided to all defense, but I'm happy to show anyone if they have any other questions.
Any objection by any defense counsel as to States 1, Dr. Sullivan's curriculum vitae, CV?
On behalf of Mr. Williams, there's no objection.
Anybody else?
No objection, Your Honor.
Does there anybody have an objection? Okay, if you don't have an objection, then I'll admit States 1 for purposes of this hearing, okay?
Thank you, and may I bring it up to...
Yes, you can hand it to Ms. Weaver, please.
And Dr. Sullivan, did you have to get any specific certifications or anything to do your job?
Yes, I'm board certified in anatomic and clinical pathology, and I'm also board certified in forensic pathology.
Okay. Now, do you have to ever take any kind of continuing education classes or continuing trainings?
Continuing education, yes.
How often do you have to do that?
Every other year when I renew my license, my medical license.
Is that basically up to date on, new procedures or any other things that might keep you up to date on anything that would have come out in the field?
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever taught any classes? Oh, I'm sorry. Can everyone hear me better now? Yes. I'm sorry. Dr. Sullivan, have you ever taught any classes or seminars or other trainings?
I teach classes at Morehouse School of Medicine in the second year pathology course.
And what are the subject of those classes?
Well, one is injuries, which is a basic introduction to forensic pathology. I also teach lectures in cardiovascular diseases, urinary tract diseases, hematopoietic diseases, and central nervous system tumors.
And have you ever had anything that you've done published or appeared in any publications or other media forms?
No.
Okay. How many autopsies have you done, ballpark?
I've either done myself or supervised a resident or fellow approximately 3,000 autopsies.
And do you currently perform autopsies in your job now as the chief medical examiner?
Yes.
Okay. And as the chief medical examiner, does that mean are you the highest ranking member in your office?
Yes.
Okay. So do you supervise others doing that as well?
Yes.
Have you been qualified as an expert witness before?
I have.
Do you know about how many times?
I think it's over 100, but I don't know an exact number.
Has that always been in Fulton County Superior Court or other courts as well?
There was one other court, Gwinnett County, in a civil case.
Okay. And what was the subject of the testimony in the Fulton County court cases?
Homicide cases, I think, have been the vast majority. There may have been a traffic accident case, but I believe the majority of them are homicides.
And is part of your job determining like how someone died or the cause of their death?
Yes.
Okay. What techniques do you use to conduct autopsies or determine cause of death? Are there certain methods that you've learned?
Well, we examine the person externally for natural disease and trauma, and internal examination of the organs also for natural disease and trauma, and also interpret toxicology results, vitreous chemistry results in order to determine cause and manner of death.
Okay. And have you been trained in analyzing all those different factors that you just discussed?
Yes.
And is that something you learned in medical school or through textbooks, publications?
Medical school, residency, and fellowship.
Okay. And are those different analyses and procedures that you perform, are those written up in medical textbooks or other written publications?
They are.
Okay. Is that fairly a standard procedure that most medical examiners use?
It is, yes.
So is there sort of a certain standard way to conduct an autopsy and determine manner of death?
Yes.
Okay. And is the work that you do in the autopsies ever checked or examined by colleagues or other reviewing boards?
Yes.
Who reviews it?
In our office, all homicide cases and undetermined manner of death cases are peer-reviewed by another person in the office.
Are there generally standards controlling the work that you do in performing the autopsies?
I'm not sure what you mean by standards.
I guess a better way to ask would be, are there best practices to perform an autopsy?
Yes.
And are those the practices that we discussed earlier that are published and taught in medical schools and in your training?
Yes.
And when you do autopsies, do you follow those best practices?
Yes.
Do you do that every time you perform an autopsy or supervise an autopsy?
I do.
And who else uses this same autopsy procedure and investigation procedure that you discuss? Is that every school or pathologist's office? Is it just to Georgia? Is it just to y'all?
No, it's all medical examiner offices who are members of the National Association of Medical Examiners or NAME follow their standards. So the majority, I would say, of offices in the country do the same thing.
Okay. And Dr. Sullivan, are you aware if you ever performed an autopsy on a Jamari Holmes? And I do have a document to refresh your recollection if necessary.
Yes, if I could see the document, please.
Your Honor, if I may use the medical examiner report to refresh your recollection, I'm happy to show it to defense counsel. It was served in discovery.
Any defense counsel wish to look at it before Ms. Rosenwasser presents it to Dr. Sullivan?
I would like to review that.
Sure.
Come on up.
No objection.
All right, ma'am, you may approach the witnesses.
Okay. And Dr. Sullivan, I'll approve this document if you could read over it and
Okay.
when your recollection is refreshed. Is your recollection refreshed, ma'am?
Yes.
Dr. Sullivan, did you perform the autopsy of Mr. Jamari Holmes?
Yes.
And did you follow all the standards and procedures that you outlined above and the best practices when you did so?
Yes.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this point, the state would ask the court to qualify Dr. Sullivan as an expert in forensic pathology based on her experience, background, training, and the fact that this is a well-established, accepted field of forensic science.
All right. Anybody wish to voir dire Dr. Sullivan?
Yes, Your
All right, go ahead.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
You mentioned to us that all of your expertise is peer-reviewed,
Yes.
and what do you mean by that?
That means that at least one other doctor reviews the report and the photographs of the autopsy before the final signature is placed on the autopsy report.
Okay, thank you. And what about the things that you learned in medical school and in undergrad? Was the subject matter you learned peer-reviewed by other medical schools? Do you know?
That I don't know.
Okay. Do you know if that would be normal or out of the ordinary?
I don't have an opinion one way or the other.
Okay. And why is it important that things are peer-reviewed?
Well, so that you aren't making a mistake that can easily be caught by someone else, just to get a second, at least another pair of eyes on the report.
Okay, thank you. And then moving on to where you talked about analyzing injuries, do you analyze gunshot wounds?
Yes.
And in your analysis of gunshot wounds, does that ever make conclusions about the trajectory of the bullet that caused a wound?
Yes.
Okay, and how do you determine that?
Well, you look to see where the entrance wound is on a person's body and where the bullet ends, or where there's an exit wound that corresponds to that entrance wound. And so using those 2 points, you can come up with a trajectory.
Okay, and you're not always able to come up with that, though, right?
No.
Okay. All right, thank you, Judge. Those are my questions.
All right, anybody else?
Yes, Your Honor. I just have a couple of questions for you. Now, when you say your reports are peer reviewed by somebody else in the office, are these blind peer reviews, or does that person know you're the one that conducted this report or created this report?
They know, we all know whose report it is.
Okay. So, well, let me ask you this. Have you ever done blind peer reviews in your office?
No.
All right, so whoever follows you up was basically trained the way you were trained. You're in the same office, you all work together, and they know you actually were the one that did the report.
No, we're not all necessarily trained in the same way. People can come into the office from other medical examiners' offices or other fellowships so that they may have a different way of looking at things. But when you're looking at gunshot wounds or other injuries, you're being as objective as you can and thinking, what do I see as I look at this person's injuries?
So, you said the majority of the offices that are under name they all follow the same procedures.
Yes.
But now you're also saying that there are other people that could be in your office that have been trained under different procedures.
No, I said that they can, you stated that anyone who peer reviews another person's report in our office, we were all trained the same way. We may have been trained in the same way, but I was trained, for example, by Dr. Randy Hanslick in the Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office. If someone is trained by Dr. Jason Graham up in New York City, then they are learning the same things that I'm learning, but looking at it as the way that Dr. Graham looks at cases. But the conclusions that you're coming to with injuries like gunshot wounds are, there's no gray. There's not gray. The thing either is or it is not a gunshot wound. So being trained by different people doesn't change the fact that if I peer reviewed a case from New York City, for example, I could see, okay, yes, that's a gunshot wound. Yes, I agree that that's an entrance. And, okay, there's the projectile that was recovered. And here's what the person said the internal injuries were. And I can use my own judgment to say, yes, that makes sense.
So if you conducted a report and there's a possibility that the person that's peer reviewing your report, which is not blind, was taught by someone else, do they get to see all of or everything that you saw coming into the report, or are they just looking at the report you created?
No, they're looking at the circumstances under which the person's death was reported, the scene findings, the scene photographs that were taken by the investigator from our office, and then they're looking at the autopsy photos so that they're making their own decision. Okay, yes, you know, Sullivan says that this gunshot wound on the left side of the chest is an entrance wound. Okay, yes, I agree. If they don't agree, then we discuss, okay, I don't think that that's an entrance wound. I think that might be an exit wound, and you come to an agreement in that way.
Okay, and my last question, does the person that peer reviewed your work, do they know your findings before they start the peer review, or do they, is it to where they make their own decision and then they realize what or see what your findings are?
No, they know because they've got a copy of the preliminary report, so they know what my findings are.
Right. And you said that's best practices in your office?
Yes.
All right, thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Anybody else?
Since there's no clock in here, I don't know whether it's morning or afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
A couple of things. Does the does the Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office have an investigator?
Yes.
Does the investigator do a preliminary report that is provided to you?
Yes.
All right. In the case, in this particular case, was there a medical examiner's investigator's report provided to you prior to your autopsy?
Yes.
All right. And you take into consideration those findings and the investigation done by the medical examiner's investigator, correct?
Correct.
All right. And then you start the autopsy. In the autopsy, do you dictate your findings?
At the end, I dictate at the end of the autopsy. Some people dictate during the autopsy, but I dictate at the end.
And do you take any notes other than your dictation of your report?
I do take notes, yes.
Okay. And you, of course, maintain those notes, correct?
Until I have finalized the report, yes.
Okay. And then those notes are what, destroyed?
There's a set of notes that go into the case management system that has a person's organ weights, and there may be a diagram on the back that shows where injuries were. But additional detailed notes concerning the size of a gunshot wound, et cetera, once I've finalized the report, I don't save those notes.
Okay. Notes are taken, but only a very small slice is saved, correct?
I'm going to object to this line of questioning at this point. My basis is that it's not relevant to the factors in Daubert of the qualification.
I must sustain the objection.
Thank you.
The I understood that there is a protocol that you follow.
Yes.
And is that a written protocol?
No.
So there is no written protocol as to what best practices are?
No, an autopsy is a straightforward procedure. And so I do the same type of examination on each homicide victim, or actually each autopsy I do.
Okay, well, we had talked in terms of best practices. Are best practices enumerated anywhere, either in the Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office or in any of the organizations that you may be involved with?
That I do not know. Not in our office, no.
So when you talk about best practices, there's no protocol, written or otherwise, that you follow. It's your best practice, correct?
It's the best practice that I was taught following what people do in our office and according to the NAME guidelines.
Okay, and what are the main guidelines?
The NAME guidelines are in homicide cases that a complete autopsy is performed, looking at both internal evidence of natural disease and injury, and examining the internal organs for natural disease and injury, retaining any projectiles or sharp force sharp instruments that were used to injure someone, drawing blood, vitreous fluid, urine if necessary.
I guess my question was directed at, is this recorded somewhere? Is there a standard by which you are guided by, either nationally or locally?
Yeah, what exactly the name standards, the exact wording is, I do not know. But I know in order to do a complete autopsy on a person, then you have to do what I just said.
Okay. Dr. Randy has published several books on forensic pathology, several versions, right? Version 1, first edition, second edition. Have you published anything with regard to forensic pathology?
No, I have not.
All right. Thank you. That's all I have.
Anybody else?
Yes, sir.
Identify yourself for record, please. Okay, thank you, sir.
Excuse me? Mr. Eppinger. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
You mentioned earlier that in your analysis or the reports that you generate, you receive I believe, an investigator's police report in this case?
A Fulton County investigator's report, yes, but that's separate from the police report.
Now, do you incorporate what you get in the investigative report in your final report?
I have a section that's called Reason for Performing an Examination, where I briefly summarize in 2 or 3 sentences why the person is dead and is needing an exam.
And that is based on what you receive in the investigative report?
Yes.
Okay. And I believe you stated earlier that your determination is to determine the cause of death, correct?
The cause and manner, yes.
So nothing that you do determines the circumstances of an individual's death?
That is correct.
And so, and in your report, do you include any type of, I guess, the word I'm looking for, do you believe your own presumptions as far as the manner of death or the circumstances around a person's death in your report?
I'm sorry, I don't understand your question.
Do you include any of your opinions regarding an individual, the circumstances surrounding a person's death, not the actual manner of death?
That the person was shot, in cases of homicide, that the person was shot by another individual or other individuals, plural.
But nothing in your report gives anything as far as the identity of any individuals or anything like that?
That may have been involved, you mean?
Yes.
No.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
All right. Remember, folks, this is just Daubert qualifications. It's not her trial examination. So, and with that, anybody else? All right. Unless there's any specific objection, the court will qualify Dr. Sullivan as an expert in the area of forensic pathology. All right. Anything else, madam?
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, Dr. Sullivan, I'm sorry I can't see you because monitor's hiding. Good to see you, madam.
Thank you.
Please don't discuss your testimony with anybody except the attorneys in this case. We'll call you when we need you, okay?
Okay, thank
You're
you.
going to go about your usual duties and avocation, okay?
All right, thank you.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you. And Your Honor, we do then have Officer Lauzon back in the back, also ready to testify.
Okay, all right, let's summon Officer Lauzon, please.
Your Honor, if the court at any point wishes to hear any case law about the admissibility of any of the items, I do have that available as well at the court's pleasure.
If I need it, I'll ask you. Officer Lauzon, could you please do me a favor and approach the witness stand once you get there, if you'd be so kind to be turned and be sworn as a witness?
My name is Raymond Lauzon, Raymond Lauzon.
Thank you. And is it Officer Lauzon or investigator?
No, I'm just a civilian, so.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. Now, Mr. Lauzon, where do you currently work?
I work with the City of Atlanta Police Department.
And what is your job there?
I am a latent print examiner.
Okay. And how long have you worked there?
I've worked for the City of Atlanta for approximately 12 years, 2 years working as a crime scene technician, and the rest working as a latent print examiner.
What is your educational background?
So I graduated with the University of Central Florida with a bachelor's degree in forensic science. In order to obtain that degree, I did an internship with the Brevard County Sheriff's Office, working with their latent print and their crime scene sections. During my time there, I was able to complete a research project and paper to determine the best chemical for development of latent prints on paper products.
And what is your job history? So I know you're with the Atlanta Police Department now. Did you have any history before that?
No, I was, like I said, I was a crime scene technician before I was promoted to the position of latent print examiner.
And as a crime scene technician, did you do anything involving fingerprints?
Yes, we developed fingerprints on crime scenes. We examined them to determine if they were of value to be sent to the latent print section. We also reviewed cases that were coming in from the officers, and we also examined fingerprints that were being sent over by the jail.
Now, since both of the jobs that you've had do involve that fingerprinting work, what kind of training did you have to do to obtain both of those jobs and to get where you are now?
So the training that I did for crime scene technician was I obtained my degree with the University of Central Florida, specializing in forensic science. After that, I came up here to Atlanta, was given the position with Atlanta Police as a crime scene technician, and I had to complete my training down at GIPSTIC for the Georgia Public Safety Training Center for the position of crime scene technician with the state of Georgia, and I got my certificate with them. That kind of classes were things like photography, crime scene processing, evidence collection, latent print development, latent print examination. And then after that, I was promoted up to the position of latent print examiner. During that time, most of my training was in-house, working with the other latent examiners, training with them. And I also was able to attend different seminars by the Ron Smith and Associates agency, working with them. And I was also able to go to the American Academy of Forensic Science conference that was held here.
And did all of those trainings sort of touch on that interest of fingerprints, including the conference?
Yes, it did.
Okay. Now, so if I'm doing my math correctly, you've been doing this since at least about 2011. I know this is probably going to be a huge number, but can you ballpark about how many fingerprint analyses you've done ever? Analyses
is somewhere over probably 10,000 working cases.
Okay. Have you ever been qualified as an expert witness before, or is this your first time?
Yes, I've been qualified.
Okay. Was it here in Fulton County?
Yes, it was.
Do you know about how many times?
Somewhere around between 15 and 20. I've also worked with Fulton County Juvenile Court and also the U.S. Federal Court.
So were you qualified under the Daubert standard in federal court? Knowledge?
Do not remember if they did that, no.
No problem. But were you qualified as an expert in federal court?
Yes, I was.
And what were you qualified as an expert in, both in federal court and state court?
Latent examination, fingerprint examination.
Okay. Your Honor, at this point, I would like to approach the witness with what's been marked as State's Exhibit 2. It is his CV, and I'd like to move it into evidence. I do have copies available if defense counsel would like to review it. It has been provided.
All right. Anybody wish to take a look at that before she approaches the witness? All right. Yes, ma'am. You may go ahead. And what exhibit number is that?
This would be Exhibit 2, unless the court would like me to do a different one for each.
That's fine. That's fine.
Seem to be ongoing here.
No, that's okay.
Sir, you will please just take a look at this document and see if you recognize it.
Yes, this looks like the CV that I submitted.
So is this your CV that you were submitted with your experience?
Yes.
Does there appear to be any changes, alterations, deletions, substitutions?
There does not appear to be, no.
Your Honor, at this point, I would like to move State's Exhibit 2, which is Mr. Lauzon's CV, into evidence for the purposes of this hearing.
Any objection by any defense counsel?
No objection.
All right, having hearing none, States 2, Mr. Lauzon's CV will be admitted for purposes of the motion.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Who said no objection? I heard Wilson.
Sorry, that was me, Menez. Mr. Farley.
Remember, if you have a specific objection, please tell me. If in the event that you don't, I'm going to assume that silence means that there is no objection. Okay.
So, Mr. Lauzon, do you ever have to take any proficiency tests to make sure that you're up to date with everything and doing your job correctly?
Yes, we take a yearly proficiency test since we attained accreditation with the ANAB organization as part of our lab.
When was the last time you took your test?
The last time I took the test was in January of this year.
What's AMAD, please, sir?
ANAB is the ANSI National Accreditation Board. ANSI is the American National Standards Institute.
And how did you perform on your proficiency test, if I may ask?
I was able to pass it with 100% accuracy.
Thank you. Now, are you with the Atlanta Police Department Crime Lab, is that correct?
That is correct.
And is that crime lab also accredited by any, I think you referenced that?
Yes, we are.
And what is that agency accredited with?
We are accredited with the ANAB, which is the ANSI National Accreditation Board, and ANSI is the American National Standards Institute.
Okay. And is that, what is that organization?
It's an accrediting body. They come out and they review us to make sure that we are following the standards that are set forth by ISO.
And what is ISO?
ISO is the Standards Institute, I believe.
Is that agency directly for fingerprint examiners or other crime labs?
It's actually for, it's a national accrediting, National Standards Institute for the entire world, basically, to check lab work.
Okay. Now, what kind of fingerprinting testing do you do? Can you explain it briefly to us?
So in our lab, we use the ACE-V methodology. ACE-V is analysis, comparison, evaluation, and verification. In the analysis phase, we're going to be looking at a latent print to determine if it is sufficient for individualization. And in that, we're looking at 3 different levels of detail. We're looking at the first level of detail being the general ridge flow and pattern. The next level of detail being the individual characteristics, or what we call minutia. We're looking at the bifurcations, ridge endings, and dots that are present in a print. And then we're going to be moving into level 3, which would be the individual characteristics on a ridge, such as the pore placement, ridge edges, anything like that. After we do that, we're going to be going into our comparison. In the comparison part, we're going to have submitted the print into the AFIS, which is the Automated Fingerprint Identification System, and it's going to come back with some results. Those results are then compared by us. In that comparison, we're looking at the known information that we obtained during the analysis phase and comparing that to a known standard. And no matter what we determine, we're then going to move on to the next stage, which is evaluation. In evaluation, we're going to be making one of 3 determinations. Either it's going to be individualization, an exclusion, or it's inconclusive. And individualization means that the information that we see present in the unknown that we established during the analysis phase is present in the known sample, and therefore we make a determination that they are from the same source. The exclusion says that the information present in the unknown sample is not present in the known sample, so we would rule that person out as a possible source. And then the last is inconclusive, meaning that the information present may be in agreement, but we are not able to make a definitive determination that it was made by the same source. The last step of that the process is then going to be a verification phase. In the verification phase, we're going to give our work over to a second qualified examiner. They're going to review the work and determine, they're going to actually be looking at it to see the negative. If we've determined an individualization, they're going to be looking at it trying to find that it's an exclusion. Based on that, if they cannot find any errors, they would have to approve our work and sign that as a verification.
Okay. And how did you learn to do that testing? It's obviously fairly complex.
I learned to do it both from study with the degree program that I took, and we also learned it from working with the other examiners and also from classes that we took with the Ron Smith and Associates as well as at GIPSIC.
Okay. Now, I want to make sure I understand because I don't have that science background. If I'm understanding your testimony, if these tests are done correctly, they will show either that the fingerprint is a match, that it's not a match, or that it's unconclusive whether it's a match or not. Is that a fair reflection, or have I gotten it wrong?
That's correct.
Okay. And why are these tests done generally?
They're done to try to determine the identity of somebody who had left latent prints on a scene. Or sometimes we're also tasked with doing them to determine the identity of a deceased.
Okay, so is it that a situation where if someone's passed away, you're determining who they
were if there's no identifying information, yes.
Okay. Now, are you aware if any other law enforcement officers, agencies, or other crime labs like APD use this, I think you said it was the ACE-V
methodology?
ACE-V methodology?
Yes, it is pretty much the only accepted methodology that we use.
Is that in Georgia or across the country or everywhere?
Worldwide, as far as I'm aware.
Okay. Do you know if any information about this ACE-V testing has been published in like a book, a magazine, publication, anything like that?
There have been many books written about ACE-V. There have also been several articles written about it, and it's been discussed in length in journals. The most common journals are going to be the Journal of Forensic Science, which is published by the AAFS, the American Academy of Forensic Science, as well as the Journal of Forensic Identification, which is the journal that's written by the International Association for Identification.
And are there any standards that control how this test is performed to make sure that you or anyone else doing it is doing it correctly? Yes,
we have to follow by, first, within our own agency, we have our SOPs, there are standard operating procedures that we have to follow along with. Beyond that, there is also the guidelines that are set forth by the ISO, as well as the general standards that are published by what used to be called the SWIGFAST, which was the standard working group for fingerprint ridge analysis, study, and technology. And then that was rolled into what they call the OSAC now, and they actually adopted most of the standards that they published.
So based on all those standards, is there a set of best practices to follow when conducting these examinations?
Yes, there is.
And do you follow both the standards we discussed and the best practices we discussed when you conduct those tests?
Yes.
And generally, when I say best practices, are those the same standards we talked about, or is there something else to add to that?
The standards are going to give us the best practices, yes.
Okay. And so are those published somewhere? Somebody could read them over if they wanted to or review them?
Yes, they are.
Do you know where?
SWIGFAST maintains a website, and so does the OSAC.
And are there written protocols, procedures on those websites?
Yes, there are.
Okay. So if you had a question or someone else did, they could
refer to those, yes.
Thank you. Now, in this particular case, obviously encompassing multiple cases, have you tested several fingerprints in this case?
Yes, I have.
Okay. I'm showing, if I may approach with 3 documents, I don't intend to admit them into evidence. I just would like to show him and confirm that these are his reports. Does anyone object to that? Okay. I'm so sorry. I was planning to show him 3 documents simply to confirm that these are the 3 documents he did in this case, and then put it on the record, the case numbers.
Can I see those briefly, please?
Sure, and I do have them available.
As long as you identify them as a state exhibit for the purpose of the record, even if you're not going to admit them.
Okay, I certainly can do that. I can also go ahead and admit them for the purposes of this hearing if the court would.
Whatever your pleasure, madam.
I'll do that.
This one applies to. I don't believe so.
I'll admit them for the purposes of the hearing. think Effinger stuff. Fleetwood, it's Fleetwood and Effinger and Beebe. Not to my knowledge. So I have what's been marked for the purposes of this hearing, states 1, 2, and 3.
You have states 1 and 2 already, so
Oh, I'm sorry, 3, 4, and 5, Your Honor.
that'll be fine. Okay.
And these were what I made available to defense counsel during our recess, but if anyone else would like to view them, I have them here.
All right, you may approach.
I may approach, thank you. Sir, I've approached you with state's exhibits for the purpose of this hearing for 3, 4, and 5. If you could review them and look up when you're.
Okay.
Okay. Do you recognize documents 3, 4, and 5?
Yes, I do.
And how do you recognize those documents?
These are reports that I had prepared for these cases.
Okay. And for each of the 3 documents, did you follow the best practices and standards that we discussed earlier?
Yes.
And to your knowledge, those cases involved defendants Fleetwood, Effinger, and Beebe?
Yes, I believe they did.
Your Honor, if I may admit them for the purposes of this hearing, States Exhibit 3, 4, and 5.
All right, Mr. Fleetwood's counsel, any objection?
Again, sir?
Oh, okay. Mr. Fleetwood, do you have any objection, sir? All right. Mr. Eppinger, you have any, Mr. Eppinger or your counsel, do you have any objections?
No objection for the purposes of this.
All right, and Mr. Beebe's counsel?
No objection for this hearing, Your Honor.
Okay, all right.
Your Honor, Sean Hoover, in regards to Mr. Fleetwood, it has to be shown that Mr. Fleetwood does not have an attorney. He does not have legal representation, and he's not prepared to answer any of those questions.
Well, you're not representing him, remember, okay? He has the right, since he's self-representing, since no counsel has been appointed, he certainly can speak up for himself if he wishes to do so. I provide him, or anybody else who doesn't have counsel with that particular same ability. I understand that he does not have an attorney as of yet, but you know, that's just the way we are at this point in time. So when you get him an attorney, if that attorney wishes to reevaluate anything that has been presented thus far, that person can do so and file particularized motions or any other issues at that point in time.
Yes, Your Honor, and I just want to make sure it's clear on the record that all these questions that be asked him, he does not have legal representation.
I understand that, sir, and I'll understand. I'll say for the record, he is not represented by counsel as of yet because we haven't been able to appoint him counsel, and then we have been attempting to do so since May of this year.
Right.
All right. All right, Mr. Fleetwood, did you have a question, sir?
Sir, I don't want to talk without my attorney because I ain't even got.
Okay, that's all right. That's all right. You're good. Like I said, when an attorney's appointed to represent you, sir, you will then, your attorney can go ahead and particularize or object to anything that's been done so far, okay?
It's on Your Honor. I ain't even had a chance to get an attorney on my case. I've been on 24-hour lockdown.
You told me that the last couple times you've been here. Mr. Hoover.
That I've been there, they've been violating my civil rights.
Okay, well, Mr. Hoover's working on getting you an attorney at this point in time, but you don't need to say anything else, okay? All right. Madam.
That's all I have on moving.
Okay, all right, then states 3, 4, and 5 are admitted for purposes of motion.
Your Honor, at this point, we would ask the court to qualify Mr. Lauzon as an expert in latent fingerprint examination based on his experience, background, training, and the fact that this is a well-established, accepted field of forensic science. And we would just ask that that this court qualify the expert as such.
Okay, for those folks that were this particular expert would apply, counsels, do you have any specific objection to qualifying Mr. Lauzon as a fingerprint expert?
And Your Honor, we
you said what would you ask me to qualify him as?
Latent fingerprints examiner, and we do just want to note that all the evidence in this case is technically admissible against all the defendants because it is a RICO.
I do have a brief cross based on that, Your Honor.
All right.
Okay, so you shared with us that you compare a known print to an unknown print.
We actually we work from the unknown print to the known print.
Okay, and then sometimes you're able to say with a certain degree of confidence that this known print is coming from the same person as the unknown print, right?
We would say from the same source, yes.
From the same source. And then do you assign any kind of confidence level to that, like 50%, 70%?
No, we don't have a confidence interval that we assign to that. We would normally say that it is determined to be from the same source.
Okay, so you're 100% sure?
Within the realm of possibility that there is a chance that there is another person that exists with that exact same fingerprint, we do acknowledge that that can happen. However, we have yet to have an example of that be presented to us. So we can't say with 100% confidence, but within the realm of what we've seen over the past 100 years.
Okay, and you also have seen partial prints, correct?
Yes.
And sometimes you can have an opinion about where a partial print came from, the source?
We do make opinions based on partial prints, yes, but they have to have within them a certain level of detail that makes us confident that that would actually be attributable to a source.
Okay, so how much detail does there have to be for you to be just as confident as you are in your other answers?
It would have to be based on a sliding scale, which is based on the quality and the quantity of information present. So with something that is a relatively low quality print, we would want to have even more information present in that print to be confident that that would actually be from the same source. With a high quality print, there may be less information present, but we would still need a certain amount of that present.
Okay, so the higher quality the print, the higher the confidence level.
The higher quality of the print, it would depend on the amount of information that is present in that print still.
Okay. And you then sometimes compare these prints to databases?
Yes, they are compared against the local, state, and federal database depending on the quality of the print.
And how do individuals get in that database?
They can get into those databases in multiple ways. I'm actually within our state and our local, I'm within our local database as I was applied for a job with the Atlanta Police. People get into local databases through many different ways. We actually get people coming in for applications, to get permits, to get licenses, things like that. And then, of course, there's also people that are being arrested. And within the state, you have the same kind of thing where you're going to have people that are applying for jobs. And the same thing within the federal level. You're going to have people that are applying for jobs with banking, and sometimes even people practicing law are going to be fingerprinted to have their jobs background checked.
Okay. Is there a way for someone outside of law enforcement to find out whether or not they're in one of these databases?
I'm not entirely sure.
Okay. And you did mention that you learned some of what you learned from a degree program?
Yes.
What was the degree program?
The University of Central Florida bachelor's degree in forensic science.
Okay. And you were taught by professors at the school?
I was taught by professors at the school, yes.
Are you aware of the educational qualifications of the professors that taught you?
I am aware of the main professor who taught us, yes.
What does that have to do with him?
I'm getting there, Judge.
All right, move along. Let's hurry it up.
So where I was getting at with that is, are you aware whether or not the work of your professors and their knowledge was peer-reviewed by their peers?
Yes, they actually had published.
That's relevant. It's him, not his professors. It's him.
And, Your Honor, that's where he learned what he learned from. So.
Still, it's him. You're not going back one level before. That's not proper. You're challenging him. Remember, his knowledge, skill, expertise, training, or education.
Okay. And just to back up and be clear, you were taught by professors, correct?
Yes, I was.
Okay. Were you ever involved in peer reviewing any of their work?
Not peer reviewing their work, no.
Okay. Because you're not one of their peers.
Yes. Okay. And not at that time, no.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to that.
I sustain the objection.
Okay. You talked about gaining knowledge from books and articles that are written in journals, correct?
That is correct.
And you're aware that, do you have any knowledge about whether the writers of those articles had those articles peer reviewed?
I'm going to object.
I sustain the objection.
Okay. And you talked about having a certain methodology and standard operating procedures?
That's correct.
And it's important that you follow those every time?
That's correct.
And why is that important?
It's important so that it sets the standard for the work that we do so that we can testify to that in courts.
Okay. Would you be comfortable doing your work without a methodology?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Judge.
All right. Anybody else?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Hoover.
Sean Hoover on behalf of Mr. Sullivan. You spoke briefly about your proficiency tests. You said you passed with 100%?
That's correct.
So are those tests pass-fail?
They are actually pass-fail within our agency. If you do not get 100%, then you would fail.
Okay. How many have you taken?
I've taken 2 within the past 2 years.
In your career, how many have you taken?
Just those 2 because we were not going through accreditation before that.
So you've never failed a proficiency test in your career up to this point?
That's correct.
All right. And can you give us the error rate of your reports when you are actually conducting reports and analysis on fingerprints?
Based on the prior experience, we would have to say that it was 100% due to the proficiency tests.
So it's your testimony that you, as an examiner, you're 100% when it comes to the tests, and you're 100% when it comes to the actual reports that you're generating from these comparisons.
That would have to be the conclusion only because we don't have anything else to base it on as of right now because we don't know ground truth when we actually are doing these work.
So you've never failed in your career as an examiner?
At this point, no, I have not.
Okay. In regards to the database that you're talking about, could you please, in your expert opinion, explain how that algorithm matches whatever prints that you got to whatever prints that it picks up in the computer?
I think I'm going to object to that question.
Basis.
It doesn't go directly to reliability. His method is asking how essentially a computer program works. We're not trying to qualify him in that computer program, just in the actual print analysis.
And, Your Honor, I don't believe that's true. We just got this gentleman saying he's been literally perfect in his entire career, and he also uses his database. That's information that he uses to create this perfect report. I want, in his professional opinion,
He uses the database to compare prints. It's a repository of prints. Is that correct, sir?
That is correct.
All right, so that's part of what he does in terms of his comparison. So do you have anything else in regards to that?
Yes. Can you explain to us how it works to verify your comparison?
How it works to verify our comparison?
Yeah, no,
it doesn't verify our comparison.
Okay, then what exactly does it do?
It generates a list of candidates based on the information that's put into it. So we would mark up.
What are you looking for specifically?
We're looking for
ridges, whorls, points of comparison. Tell them a little bit about that.
Okay, so what we're looking for when we're actually putting in a print is we're going to take an image of it, then we're going to mark it up based on what we see. So when I talked earlier about the analysis phase, that's what we're looking at, is the different levels of detail that are present in a print. So when we're looking at the analysis, we're looking at what the pattern type is, what the original general ridge flows are, and then when we get into level 2 detail, that's when we're actually looking for the individual characteristics, which are going to be what we call the minutia. So we're looking at bifurcations, ridge endings, and dots that are present in the print. We're then going to mark those onto that image that is sent, and it's going to review the distance between those individual events within how many ridges are in between each one of those events. It's then going to submit that off to the database where it's going to review all the candidates looking for similarities between what we've put in and what is in the database.
So I guess it only searches what you've noticed as the different swirls and loops and ridges and all that. It doesn't look at anything else but what you've put in yourself, right?
That's correct.
All right. And if you don't know if you've ever failed, how do we know what the computer generates comes out is actually correct as well? Well, what we do is we're going to actually review each one of those candidates that comes back. We're looking at them to see if there is a comparison that we can make in between those. And then once that's done, we're actually going to, if we find something that says, yes, this is that person, it then has to be reviewed by a second candidate, or by a second qualified examiner.
It has to be reviewed by a second, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part you said.
Qualified examiner.
Qualified examiner. Okay, now is that examiner someone that's in your office as well?
Yes.
Trained like you?
For the most part, yes.
Takes the test like you?
Yes.
All right, no further questions, thank you.
All right, anyone else? All right, if there being no other examination, the court will qualify Mr. Lauzon in the area of latent fingerprint examination. All right, anything else?
No, Your Honor. If the court, so per the court's request, I have reached out.
Hold on one second. Mr. Lauzon, and you're free to go about your usual duties and avocation just on special testimony, anybody except the attorneys in this case. We'll call you when we need you, okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate you. All right, Ms. Rosenwasser, you're about to say something. I apologize.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Per the court's request, for different witnesses this afternoon, I know the court mentioned Ms. Scott. I reached out to Ms. Scott. She has been able to obtain child care with her husband this afternoon. So if the court would like to have her testimony, I can get her in this afternoon.
That'd be wonderful.
And then I can have Deputy Hall come tomorrow morning as planned if the court would be amenable to that.
Okay, is there anybody else? I would say maybe we should have Ms. Scott come in at 2:30.
Okay.
Would that work for you? And that would give everybody an opportunity to have some lunch. Is there anybody else that we can call in this afternoon that might be from the other days that you have, any of the people on the 21st or 22nd?
One moment, please. So obviously we have Investigator Hall, but that is going to be a lengthier one. So we can have him in as scheduled. Give me one moment, Your Honor, to pull up the schedule. Trying to make sure that everybody...
I would just ask you that, or you or your team, reach out to see if there's anybody on the 20 who's, except for the gang experts, okay, because they're going to take a little bit longer. But if we can potentially move up some of those folks so that I can actually hear, we can have a little bit more time, because they'll take a little bit of time. Mr. Hall will probably take a little bit of time more, so that if we can clear Ms. Scott and Mr. Pineda this afternoon, that would be great.
Your Honor, I believe Mr. Pineda was only available tomorrow, but we can clear Ms. Scott this afternoon. I can call Ms. Brennan from the 21st and see if she can come in after.
Yeah, just recheck with everybody else and just say, hey, look, we have an opportunity to move you up a little bit, and we might be able to do that. That would be helpful. That would allow us to at least spend as much time as necessary with Mr. Hall tomorrow. I'll let you and your team kind of continue to work with that, and we can then. But in the absence of that, we'll continue with Ms. Scott at 2:30 today. Okay.
Thank you, and I'll try to find somebody else to come after her as well.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Or any of the other days, like your firearms expert from the what's the NIBIN expert? What's that?
That's the NIBIN. That's how they identify the firearms. We don't. And he is only the first day that he's available is the 22nd, so that's why we have him there.
All right.
The firearms expert. I know that his presentation is probably going to be a couple hours just because of how detailed the ballistics are.
Okay.
So and one of our cell site location information, both of those individuals are, one of them is in Alabama, so he had been planning to come for Wednesday. I can see if I can get the other individual to come today if the court would like to stay later.
Well, I was going to ask you, is Ms. Van Holm the firearms expert and Mr. Voss the firearms expert, are they available?
Unfortunately, both of them are not available until next week, but we do have Mr. Tanner coming, and I'll put the court on notice now with the experts such as the forensic chemists and the firearms expert. Once we have that first expert testify, like for example, we had the medical examiner testify about the reliability of the science itself. we probably just need to do the qualifications, and we would ask the court to take judicial notice that it had already found the science itself reliable. So that those would be fairly short witnesses next week, would be our anticipation.
Okay. All right.
But we'll certainly try to see if we can get, I just confirmed with Ms. Scott she can absolutely be here at 2:30 in person, and I will call Ms. Lowry and see if she'd be able to come, or Ms. Brennan, and see if she'd be able to come in after that.
That's fine. Okay. All right, councils, then we'll be in recess until 2:30. We'll come back and take up those, at least Ms. Scott and any other shorter witnesses, and then we'll make plans for tomorrow.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. All right, we're in recess.
It gives us time to. Go to the. I think it is. We admitted them.